As a wise old Jewish storyteller named Chaim, born in Odessa back in the days when it was part of the Russian heartland, I've seen my share of storms. I'm in my 70s now, living quietly in Israel. But the memories? They still keep me up at night. Let me tell you a story, dear friend, one that comes from the soul of our people. It's about truth in hard times, the kind that families whisper over the Sabbath table. Sit with me, like we're sharing tea, and listen close. This isn't just any tale. It's about a young man named David, my grandson, who thought he had it all until the world pulled the rug out from under him. David stood there in his empty apartment in Tel Aviv, the kind of place that once felt like a castle. Papers scattered on the floor, the bank's letter clutched in his hand. Everything gone. Savings, job, the fancy car parked outside. All vanished in the crash, like smoke. His phone buzzed. It was the hospital. "Your father, Israel, he's slipping away." David's heart pounded. He rushed out, but in the cab, something caught his eye. A faded photo from his father's wallet slipped out in the hurry. "Grandpa Haim, that's me, holding a thick stack of rubles from the 1930s famine days." But wait, those bills looked wrong. Not just old, fake, counterfeit. Why would I, a simple trader, carry fakes through the worst hunger Russia ever knew? David's mind reeled. What secrets had his family buried? The hospital smelled of bleach and worry, the kind that sticks in your throat. David pushed through the doors, his shoes squeaking on the tile. Israel lay there, pale as a ghost, machines beeping like distant thunder. "Son," he whispered, eyes half closed, "come home. The real wealth, it's not in banks or walls." David leaned in, sweat beading on his forehead. He'd built his life on numbers, engineering contracts, quick deals in the city bustle. Now? Nothing. Fear gripped him, sharp as a winter wind off the Black Sea. He remembered the stories from childhood, vague tales of how we'd survived the famines in Odessa, when neighbors starved, but our table somehow stayed set. As Israel drifted off, David's hand brushed something in his father's pocket, a worn book, the Talmud, edges frayed like old sails. Inside, scribbled in faded ink, notes about the anchor of family, holding through the storm. Strange. Their family had always scraped by, no fortunes, just enough. But why hide it? And that photo, me with those fake rubles, burned in his mind. He flipped the pages, heart racing. A key fell out, brass and heavy, labeled Odessa home. Why send him back to Russia now, with threats of old debts and closed borders? The room spun. Nurses whispered in Hebrew about the economic woes hitting everyone. David felt trapped, like a fish on a line. What had his father known that he didn't? The more he thought, the darker the shadows grew. David sat by the bed as night fell, the city lights flickering like distant stars. His whole world had crumbled. The wife waiting at home, the kids asking for stability, all hanging by a thread. He'd chased success, thinking money was the shield. But now, staring at that key, he saw the lie. "What did you mean, Dad?" he murmured. "How did Grandpa Haim make it through the hunger when the world ate its own? And why do our fortunes always slip away, only to circle back like a boomerang?" The questions clawed at him. This wasn't just loss, it was a riddle wrapped in family blood. I tell you this, my friend, because if you stay with me to the end, you'll uncover the 7 rules our people have whispered down the generations, the ones that kept wealth alive when empires fell. Rules born from Torah wisdom and hard Odessa winters, not from books or banks, but from the heart. David felt it too. He couldn't run. He had to go back to that old house in Odessa, dig up the truth before it buried him. His hand closed around the key. Decision made. But as he stepped into the hall, a shadow moved. An envelope slid under the door. No stamp, just 3 words. "Stop digging, or pay. His blood ran cold. What danger waited across the sea? Oh, my dear listener, if Act 1 left you wondering about that key in David's hand, hold on tight. The road ahead gets bumpier, like the old cobblestones in Odessa during a rainstorm. David, my grandson, thought he could just hop on a plane and unravel the family knots. But life, as we Jews know from the Torah, tests you at every turn. He left Tel Aviv that very night, the envelope's warning burning in his pocket like a hot coal. What he found in Russia would shake him to his core, revealing the first glimmers of those 7 rules that have guarded our people's quiet strength through famines and falls. The flight to Odessa felt endless, the Black Sea below like a dark mirror reflecting David's fears. He landed in the gray dawn, the air thick with salt and memories he didn't even know he had. A taxi dropped him at the old address, a sagging wooden house on a narrow street where Soviet stars still peeled from the walls. The door creaked open, and there stood Aunt Sarah, my sister, her face lined like an ancient scroll. "David, from Israel? Your father called in his fever, said you'd come digging." She was sharp-eyed, pulling him inside with a hug that smelled of fresh challah bread. The house was a time capsule, faded photos of me in my trader days, a menorah gathering dust. Sarah led him to a hidden trunk under the floorboards, the family archive she'd guarded since the war. David's hands trembled as he lifted the lid. Letters, ledgers, a few tarnished coins. "Your Grandpa Haim wrote these during the hunger years," Sarah said softly. "He traded scraps for bread when others begged." But the lock on the trunk stuck. Turns out the city had slapped a line on the place for unpaid taxes from decades ago. A petty official loomed outside, demanding papers David didn't have. Heart racing, David argued, offered what cash he had left. Sarah whispered a tip, a small bribe, nothing grand, just enough to grease the wheel. The man grumbled, but left. Victory. David pored over the papers, eyes widening. There, in my scrawled handwriting, Rule 2, labor without complaint, like a drop wearing down the stone. Work the soil, mend the net. Wealth grows in the doing, not the dreaming. It hit him like a warm light. Those old contracts weren't fortunes, but stories of me fixing carts, sewing clothes, anything to feed the family when the world starved. This is it, David thought, pulse quickening. I can rebuild back home, start small, no more chasing shadows. Hope bloomed, fragile but real. He even smiled, packing the trunk. The path seemed clear now, leading straight to salvation. But hope, my friend, is a tricky candle. It flickers just when you need it most. David spent the next day sorting the archive, sketching plans to sell off bits of family lore online, turn hardship into a lesson for others. Aunt Sarah nodded, brewing tea strong as the Black Sea tides. "Your grandpa gave away half his earnings, even in the lean times," she said. "Called it tzedakah, charity, not loss, but seed for tomorrow." David laughed it off at first. Charity? When he was broke? But as evening fell, sirens wailed outside. Flames licked the house's edge, arson, quick and cruel. The official from before? Or someone tied to that warning envelope? David and Sarah barely escaped, coughing smoke, the trunk half charred. Inside, the ledgers confirmed it. During the 1930s famine, I'd handed food to strangers, lost a cart to debts, but somehow neighbors repaid tenfold. Rule 3. Charity as investment, my note read. Give from the heart and the world gives back, not always in coin, but in life. Shock slammed David. This wasn't petty theft, it was targeted. His phone buzzed, a call from Tel Aviv. His wife Rachel arrested for fraud linked to his old firm. The crisis wasn't just his anymore, it threatened the whole family, kids included, like a wave swallowing a boat. David paced the street, rain mixing with tears. The small wind felt like a joke. How deep does this go? he whispered. The rules weren't pretty poems. They demanded sacrifice, turning loss into a gamble. No more half measures. He needed allies, real ones. Sarah pressed a name into his hand. The old synagogue, where the minyan still gathered like in ancient times. Find the brothers, David. Rule 4 waits there. But as he turned, a shadow watched from the alley. The stakes had skyrocketed, from personal ruin to family chains. He had to fight smarter or lose everything. Desperation clawed at David like a winter frost. With the house gone, he and Sarah holed up in her tiny flat, the archive's remnants spread on a wobbly table. "We go to the synagogue at dawn," she urged. "The minyan, 10 good men. They've held secrets since your grandpa's day." David nodded, but doubt gnawed. His passport was flagged, borders tightened. Still, he slipped, out dodging patrols, heart pounding like a drum in the night. The synagogue stood weathered, its dome a silent witness to pogroms and purges. Inside, candlelight danced on prayer shawls. The minyan was forming, elders murmuring psalms, faces etched with survival's weight. David burst in, breathless, spilling his tale. The fire, the arrest, the family curse of fleeting wealth. The rabbi, an old fox named Aaron, eyed him sternly. "Outsider? From Israel? Prove your blood." David showed the charred Talmud page, my handwriting. Whispers rose. They circled him, testing with questions from Torah. What binds us in storm? Desperate, he invoked the Sabbath table, the warmth of shared bread. It worked, barely. Aaron leaned close. Rule 4, the network of brothers, a rope that doesn't break. Alone, we fall. Together, we stand, like stones in a wall. They shared contacts, distant cousins in Israel, traitors who'd known me. One even wired money for a flight. Elation surged. David hugged Aaron, visions of Rachel free, business reborn. But the price? To get the rabbi's trust, he confessed a white lie from his youth, betraying a school friend for a job, and now that old contact in Tel Aviv cut him off, fearing scandal. Worse, as he left, a minyan member trailed him, warning, "Some debts never die. You've stirred the ghosts." By midnight, despair crashed down. Sarah wept, the flat raided, her savings seized. Rachel's call, trial tomorrow, no bail. David slumped against the wall, the victory ashes in his mouth. He'd gained a thread of the net, but lost the loom. Everything worse, homeless, hunted, family fracturing. No hope left, just the echo of my voice in the notes. Adapt or break. The night closed in, black as the grave. My friend, if Act 2 left you feeling the weight of that despair on David's shoulders like the yoke of an old ox, you're right there with him. I've lived those nights myself, huddled in Odessa cellars when the world howled outside. But dawn always comes, even if it's faint at first. David hit bottom, but from there, the real lessons rose, like yeast in Sabbath dough. The rules weren't just words on paper, they were lifelines, pulling him from the depths. Watch how he climbed, step by painful step, toward the light our people have always chased. The flat's walls closed in on David like a tomb, the raid's mess everywhere, shattered teacups, Sarah's sobs echoing soft. He sat on the cold floor, passport gone, phone dead, Rachel's voice from that last call, a ghost. Fight for us, David, for the children. Everything lost, home, trust, even the family net he'd barely touched. Despair wrapped him tight, heavier than the famines I'd endured. Why bother, he muttered, head in hands. The rules mocked him. Charity, brothers, labor, all ashes now. He was done, ready to curl up and let the storm take him. But in that black hour, as rain tapped the window like impatient fingers, something stirred. David pulled out the last unscorched page from the archive, my handwriting blurred but clear. Adapt, boy, like the tent in the desert. bend with the wind or snap. Rule 5. Change is survival. Cling to the old and you wither. It clicked, slow at first, then like lightning. All the pieces fit. My shifts from trader to tailor in the hunger years, Sarah's quiet moves through borders, even the synagogue's hidden ways. He'd been rigid, chasing his engineer's pride, ignoring the flow. The crisis wasn't the enemy. His stubbornness was. Eyes stinging, he whispered the Modeh Ani prayer I'd taught him as a boy, thanking the dawn before it broke. A spark ignited. No more begging the net, he had to weave his own path. The new plan formed, wild and risky. Sneak back to Israel via old smuggling routes the Minyan had hinted at, confront the collectors head-on, use every scrap of adaptation to turn their game against them. It could land him in jail, or worse, but it was the only way. Sarah watched him rise, her face softening. "Go, nephew, the light's in you yet." David nodded, resolve hardening like steel in fire. The fight wasn't over. It was just beginning, fiercer than before. David moved like a shadow through Odessa's back alleys, heart thumping with each step. The Minyan's whispers led him to a forgotten dock where a weathered fisherman, a distant cousin named Itzhak, waited with a creaky boat. For Haim's blood, he grunted, no questions. The sea crossing was hell, waves slamming, salt in his wounds, but David adapted, bailing water, mending a tear in the sail with his belt. By dawn, Tel Aviv's skyline pierced the horizon, a promise and a threat. He didn't go home. Straight to the collector's office, a sleek building in the business district, glass walls hiding their greed. Disguised in borrowed clothes from Itzhak, rough, unassuming, David slipped past security, heart racing. Inside, files on his family, Rachel's arrest papers stacked high. The boss, a slick man named Levi with eyes like a fox, lounged at his desk. "You? The ghost from Russia? Thought you'd run?" David's voice steady. "I'm here to end this." He laid out the rules like weapons. Charity's return, the unbreakable net, showing forged docs from the archive that proved their debts were tricks, echoes of old Soviet scams I'd outwitted. Levi laughed, calling guards. Stakes soared. A fistfight broke out, David dodging blows, his ribs cracking from one hit. He fell, vision blurring, but remembered Rule 6. Faith in the unseen, a debt that doesn't bend. Believe beyond sight, like the candle's flame in endless night. In the chaos, he prayed silently, Modeh Ani again, trusting the net. And it came. A door burst open. Not police, but allies. The Israeli cousins from the Minyan, tipped off by a quick message before the sea. They had lawyers, proof of fraud, even a rabbi's testimony tying Levi to shady deals preying on immigrants. The tide turned. Levi lunged, but David adapted, tripped him with a edop chair, held him till the real authorities arrived. Rachel's release ordered on the spot. The collector's ring crumbled under the evidence. Victory clear, hard won. David collapsed against the wall, bloodied but breathing, as sirens wailed. The rules had fused, adaptation steering him, faith lighting the way. The unseen became seen, justice, family, a fragile peace. The office raid's dust hung in the air like morning fog, papers fluttering as police led Levi away in cuffs. David leaned on a cousin's shoulder, ribs aching, but a weight lifted. Rachel rushed in later, tears streaming, hugging him fierce. "You came back," she whispered. The kids piled on, their small hands a balm. Sarah called from Odessa, safe, the flat cleared. For the first time in months, David slept deep. No dreams of loss. Months passed, like seasons turning gentle. Back in a modest apartment, not the castle but home, David started small. No big engineering firm. Instead, a workshop teaching trades inspired by my labor rule. He adapted the family stories into classes, helping others through crises with tzedakah drives and community nets. Wealth trickled in, not rivers of gold, but steady streams, enough for Sabbath tables laden with peace. He changed too, wiser, less proud, eyes seeing the unseen blessings. Rachel smiled more. The kids asked about Grandpa Haim, drawing pictures of tents and storms. One evening, as the sun dipped over the Mediterranean, David sat at that table, the old Talmud open. He traced my words, the 7 rules now etched in his soul. A final image lingered, him lighting the candles, flame steady against the breeze, symbol of the light that endures. The world was new, not perfect, but resilient, like our people through the ages. Hard times come, but with the heart's wisdom, they pass. Ah, listener, after that hard-fought piece in Act 3, you might think the story settles like dust after a gust. David's world pieced back together, candles burning steady. But as I've learned in my long years, from Odessa's harsh streets to Israel's quiet hills, true wisdom often hides in the quiet after the roar. The rules don't end with victory, they turn the mirror on the soul. Let me guide you deeper, as if we're pausing over another cup of tea before the real heart of it unfolds. The apartment glowed soft in the evening light, simple walls holding the warmth of family. David eased into his chair, ribs still tender but healing, Rachel's hand in his. The kids laughed in the next room, their voices a melody he'd nearly lost. Outside, the sea whispered gentle, no more tempests. Levi and his crew? Behind bars, their scams unraveled like old thread. Sarah sent a letter from Odessa, house rebuilt with help from the minion, life flowing again. David breathed deep. Finally, he thought, the nightmare's done. We've won. Peace wrapped him like a well-worn shawl, the Talmud resting closed on the table. It felt complete, a chapter closed. But in that hush, as David sipped tea alone one dusk, the old book called to him. He opened it, fingers tracing my faded script, the 7 rules laid bare. Family anchor, tireless labor, giving charity, brotherly nets, bending like a tent, faith's unseen light, and the long view, a stone in the heart that teaches patience. A chill ran through him. The words blurred, then sharpened. And then it hit, sharp as a knife in the quiet. He understood. It wasn't about the collectors or the crash, not the fires in Odessa or the arrests in Tel Aviv. Those were shadows, echoes of the world's cruelty. The real enemy, the one that had wrecked his life from the start, was his own pride, blind, stubborn pride that whispered he could conquer alone, without the old ways. That arrogance had pushed him to chase quick fortunes, ignore the family's whispers, betray a friend for a shortcut. The external fights, mere reflections of the battle inside, where he'd clung to illusions like a drowning man to driftwood. Look back, and it all reframed, tragic and clear. The fake rubles in my photo? Not deceit, but a lesson I'd hidden, wealth's fragility when pride rules. His victories, like bribing the official or storming the office? Hollow, born from the same ego that lost Rachel's trust, Sarah's home. Even the rule's power emerged only when he cracked, when adaptation forced humility. The famines I'd survived? Not just luck, but yielding pride early, letting family and faith lead. David's chest tightened with sorrow. How many cycles had he repeated, like our people in exile, blind to the inner chain? The true cost, years stolen, bonds strained, a soul scarred deeper than any bruise. But in seeing it, a quiet freedom stirred, the pride's grip loosening at last. And in that moment, David's tale stopped being just one man's wanderings. It became a mirror, held up to every soul who's chased security only to find sand slipping through fingers. We've all felt it, the outer storms masking the tempests within. What if the fiercest foe we battle lifelong isn't people or fate, but the unseen shadow we carry, the pride or fear we refuse to face? That's the question hanging like smoke, pulling us toward the deepest truth yet. But what happened to David after that mirror moment, you ask? Well, it wasn't the end of his path, not by a long shot. The real story, the one that kept me up nights in Odessa and now here in Israel, lies in why these trials repeat across generations, like echoes in a valley. Why do we build towers of sand only to watch them wash away? I've pondered that over countless Sabbaths, and it's the heart of our 7 rules. Not just survival tricks, but keys to the soul's quiet wars. Let me draw you closer, as if we're the only two here, sharing this wisdom few dare to voice. See, David's life didn't snap back to some fairy tale glow. He carried that inner revelation like a stone in his pocket, lightening the load, but reminding him always. The rules wove into his days, anchoring, family talks over simple meals, laboring without grudge in his workshop, giving tzedakah to strangers who'd once been him. But the deeper pull? It tugged at me too, watching from afar. Why did he, like so many of us, stumble into the same traps? Why chase the visible shine, ignoring the light within? You see, friend, have you ever paused in your own quiet hours and wondered why crises hit not just the wallet, but the spirit, like a storm aimed at your core? It's no accident. In my years, from the Russian famines to Israel's building pains, I've seen it. We all walk paths carved by unseen habits, repeating losses because the soul clings to what's familiar, not what's wise. This isn't talk from books or rabbis' pulpits. It's the raw truth I earned in the dirt. And right now, in this tale, we're peeling back the last layer, the one that turns rules into revelation. Stick with me. What comes next is the gold most folks miss, the insight that could reshape your tomorrows. Listen now. Pause with me. Because the 7 rules aren't spells for money. They're mirrors for the heart, showing how we sabotage our own abundance. The secret, the one that shook David and echoes through our people's history? It's this. True wealth endures not by hoarding, but by breaking the cycle of inner shadows, like pride that blinds, fear that freezes. Those rules, family as anchor, labor's steady drip, charity's open hand, the brother's rope, adaptation's bend, faith's hidden flame, and the patient stone, they form a circle, a wheel we spin until we choose to step off. David spun it for years, chasing alone, giving grudgingly, doubting the unseen. But in his lowest dark, he saw, the brain picks the known path, even if it's thorns, because change terrifies more than loss. And so life loops, crises repeat, wealth slips, until one act of surrender, yielding the ego, embracing the rules as soul medicine. Just like in Torah tales, where Jacob wrestles not man, but self, to earn his blessing. Now think on your own road, those hard times that circle back, the choices that feel fated. They're not fate, they're your inner wheel, waiting for the rules to halt it. This is the information that lasts, the kind that turns hardship into harvest. So, what wheel spins in your life, pulling you through the same storms? What one rule could you lean on today to step free? Ponder that as the candle flickers low. Stories like David's, drawn from our deepest wells, we unpack here often, threads to weave your own strength. To catch the next one that might light your way, you know the way forward.